We're going to continue our discussion now with former prosecutor Doug Burns, also trial attorney and radio host of the Barack Lurie Show, Barack Lurie, and distinguished professor at Truro University, Thane Rosenbaum. As I mentioned, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor and adjunct professor at law school at Cornell University School of Law. My goodness, the ultimate multi-hyphenate. That would be our friend Randy Zellin also joining us. And as I said, of course, former federal prosecutor Doug Burns. And now we're officially out of time because we've yeah, exactly.
Good night,
Thanks for coming, and we'll see you later. Randy, great to have you back with us. All right, I'm just going to let you go. What have you been observing? Is he or isn't he going to be indicted?
If I could tell you that, boy, oh boy, I'm going to go play the lottery now. Certainly the prevailing thought is yes. Certainly, I don't think his attorneys went to go meet with Jack Smith today to talk about the back nine at Bedminster and the weather. They probably talked about, hey, when's it coming down? They may have talked about the surrender date, and they may have talked about all kinds of stuff, but certainly it would be foolish for anyone to say he's not getting indicted no more than, what a unique soundbite. My lawyers told me I did nothing wrong.
Yeah. Oh, yes,
by
the way, I was going to ask that, and let's bring in Barack Lurie for this question. I actually wrote down, in quotation marks, advised by many lawyers. That's one of the things that the former president put in the Truth Social. I think that's a message somewhere, Barack, that if you're going to try to hold me accountable for things that you're going to accuse me of, you should know that I have the law on my side and other people advising me to that effect.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. I think that he always wants to make it clear that he's got a very strong bevy of lawyers that will support him in every way. Look, the problem with this is that it's always very political with this particular ex-president. They are very indictment happy. Why stop now, I think, is their theory. So a grand jury can, of course, indict a ham sandwich, as they always say, and there's no difference in this particular case. Look, they've got an agenda, and that agenda is to make life very difficult for Trump and also to put question marks in the eyes of every potential voter regarding the viability of Trump going forward, and that he will be weighed down by all these indictments. That's the main issue here. So that's why it's so difficult to anticipate the indictment. From a substantive point of view, I don't think there's any basis for this indictment whatsoever. It's quite silly. We've all saw the videotape. We all saw the comments that were made. They're not going to be able to show that he somehow encouraged some sort of riot. It's just not there. But the indictment could very well be passed down, and that's what frightens us all.
Doug, want to turn now to the Hunter Biden case. Of course, a big surprise yesterday in court when that plea deal was essentially scrapped. What's next? What's the next step for his legal team?
Well, apparently they need to retweak the plea agreement. I mean, the problem was what we call the immunization clause. It says right in there, in return for the plea of guilty, the government will not charge the defendant as follows. It's usually very, very narrowly tailored. Won't charge him for tax offenses for 2017 and 18. Won't charge him with any gun offense having to do with lying on a form. And that's it. Case closed. What they tried to do is make this incredibly broad immunization clause. And they were incorporating another document by reference and all this. And the judge saw right through it. And the judge was making it crystal clear. Wait a minute. Is your investigation still continuing? DOJ boxed themselves in on that one because they did that so that they wouldn't be required necessarily to provide documents to Congress. But then the judge called them out on it and said, well, could you charge him with a Foreign Agent Registration Act violation, for example? They said, yes, we could, Your Honor. And so it all kind of fell apart. So to answer your question, finally, they're going to try to retweak it, go back and see if the judge will approve it.
All right, Thane, I wanted to let people know that we're just learning this. A deputy clerk at the U.S. District Court in D.C., which we've been keeping an eye on, by the way, says no indictments were returned today and none expected for the remainder of the day. That's where the grand jury was meeting there in Washington, D.C. And so, Thane, let's keep the focus. We can get back to that. Because that could come tomorrow. We know that just may mean today it's not going to happen. So while we're talking about Hunter and the FARA exposure. Give us your thoughts about that. Explain to people what that is related to being an agent of a foreign government, if you will, because in court yesterday, Hunter admitted that he got money and worked for Burisma and CEFC, a Chinese company.
So, Bob, before we get to that, everyone, one thing I don't know if we've said today, everyone on your set right now, especially you, Bob, being my star student, knows that 98% of all criminal cases are resolved by way of plea bargain. So no matter what you see on Law and Order, a criminal trial is very rare, 2% of the time. So what happened yesterday, it was very unspecial, except for one thing. Normally, the judges, because they're overwhelmed, simply say, if you've negotiated a plea between both of you and you're satisfied with it, who am I to interfere with that? Let's go to the next case, hit the gavel, and move on to the next case. But because America was watching, and because this involved the president's son, this federal judge, I think we need to credit her to say, let me take a little time here and examine what you think you both agreed to. Because I think she was probably shocked as well that get your acts together. You come here telling me you have a plea agreement. You both negotiated it, and now you're telling me each that you think you interpret it very differently. So the Farah thing comes up this way, which is to say, she's saying, look, under the double jeopardy clause, you can't be tried and convicted of the same crime twice. So she's saying, if I sign off on this, is Hunter Biden done? Is that it? Does he have a blanket immunity? So she raised the question. Believe me, Hunter Biden's attorneys winced the minute they heard Farah because they're terrified of this. Yeah. You don't think they were watching the whistleblowers last week? Mm-hmm. Everyone was watching. Everyone understands the amount of money that was going in, that was being negotiated, and very often through pressure tactics by Hunter Biden.
17 million, to put a number on it.
Right, 17 million. The question is, for what? These are foreign governments. Remember, Donald Trump is being prosecuted for espionage, and he had no connection in the documents case with any foreign governments. But in this case, this is all about foreign corporations giving him money, different foreign entities, and he was required to register as a foreign agent if he was going to play that role. And if he didn't, those are serious violations. And the judge was correct as to say, is that open? Is that still possible? And the prosecution said it is. And that was when Hunter Biden's lawyers just stood up and said, no, it's not. We're not agreeing to anything like that. Right. And here we are today.
Randy, want to get your thoughts on this. Do you see that as more and more, I'll say, information comes out about Hunter Biden, of course, as Thane referenced, the whistleblower's testimony that we all witnessed, are you seeing more dots that could potentially connect this Hunter Biden's crimes to Joe Biden when he was vice president?
No. All I saw yesterday was a federal judge, to her credit, did not want this back in her lap, because if this went through and Hunter Biden believed that he was done and the government went ahead and indicted him on Farah or on bribery or on something else, he comes back and says, wait a minute, I have an agreement that says we're done. Well, who does it end up going back to? It goes back to that judge because he moves to vacate his plea or to kill the indictment. She rules against him. He then goes to the First Circuit, and then the appellate judges will say, Judge, all you really needed to do was just ask the damn question. So she asked the damn question. They took a shot. It didn't work. They'll come back. This will be done in a couple of weeks. He will take his plea, and what will be, will be.
Yeah, the thing is, Barack, a lot of people wonder who's in that courtroom on behalf of the American people, because the appearance is that you have the DOJ there for President Biden. I'm sorry, but in shorthand, that's the way a lot of people see it. And the lawyers for Hunter Biden are obviously there for him. And it's like they come to this deal that everybody else, a lot of other people are looking at saying, hold on, wait a minute, that's a sweetheart did. That doesn't even seem right. And that's where we stand here. She's actually the only thing that stands between this sweetheart deal and what a lot of people would consider more justice.
That's so true. It was clearly a sweetheart deal that they arranged. Excuse me. But there's an expression in the law that we say very often, which is that pigs get fed and hogs get slaughtered. And this is a situation where a hog really got slaughtered. They really just went way too far when what they expected to get out of this. They tried to pile on the whole kitchen sink for immunity and maybe have this all swept under the rug. It just didn't work. And I think this judge was forced to say, look, you're really pushing me way too far here to expect me to sign off on this. There's a reason why a judge has to sign off on these things. There has to be some sort of final backstop there to show that there's credibility to the proposal. And she said no.
All right, just about out of time, but Doug, just wanted to quickly ask you, go back to what we just learned, that there will be no indictment for the former president handed down today. But again, we discussed this with Randy and the rest of the team. Do you also think it is imminent and that it's going to happen?
Could very possibly be very late in the day tomorrow. We've seen that before. They go into these late Fridays, to take it into, weekend coverage. They also want to get rid of or get the Biden story put behind, as you were explaining.
Right. Off the front page, if anybody reads front pages anymore.
Yeah, well.
Off the top of the screen.
Yeah, well, the good stuff's on page 19 after you jump to it. But jokes aside, I don't have a crystal ball. And working off what Randy said, if I could answer that, then, I'd buy a lottery ticket, et cetera. But the point is, could very well be tomorrow afternoon, late afternoon.
All right, Barack Lurie, Dan Rosenbaum, thank you for joining us.